Hello and good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, we would like to tell you all that in today's session we would be discussing on very important issue, or we would say very important topic. The topic is re-emerging Russia, and for this very discussion we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Rajan Kumar. Dr. Rajan Kumar is Associate Professor in School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So let's welcome our guest Dr. Rajan Kumar and let's try to grab deep knowledge on the topic re-emerging Russia. Hello sir. Welcome to the UGC.
Thank you so much, Geetika. And friends, good afternoon. Today we will be talking about re-emerging Russia, which might sound a little bit ironical in the sense that, if you read the literature or if you are following the newspaper, especially the Western newspaper, then the Russia is being projected as a declining power in the last few years, or because of the economic slowdown, because of the different crises that Russia faced in the last few years. The Western literature is very negative about Russia, but my title, which is a little ironical today, is re-emerging Russia, and there is a reason why I use the term re-emerging Russia. And I'll give you a broad picture of Russia in the last 25 years, since 1991, and I'll through economic, political, military, and other indicators like demography and all, I'll try to show you how the Russia has emerged in the last 25 years, and how economically, militarily, politically, how Russia has become much more stable compared to the 1990s period. So that's the reason, today I have chosen the topic re-emerging Russia, and here I'll be discussing about political stability, the way this Russia became politically stable in compared to 1990s. I'll also be talking about economic indicators. So if you see the graph of economy, Russian economy, so 1990s was the period of crisis. That was followed by a fast growth from 2000 onwards, when President Putin became the ruler of Russia, and that continued from 2000 to 2012. And Russian economy today is one of the 10th largest, is among the top 10 largest economies in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. So that's one of the reasons why I'm using the term re-emerging Russia. Militarily, Russia today is the second most powerful country in the world, despite the kind of crisis that it faced in the 1990s and later. Russia today, even today, is the second important military power in the world after United States. In terms of nuclear power, in terms of tanks, in terms of fighters, in terms of technology. So Russia has become really, really important in terms of military today. If you see the way Russia has become much more assertive in the foreign policy, so that also shows the kind of growing confidence that Russian leadership or the Russian state exhibits in the international system. Russia, which was a kind of, in the 1990s, it became almost confined to a local and regional player, but today Russia has become a systemic player. So Russia is not only intervening in the affairs of its neighbors, but also Russia is going much beyond its neighbors, and as you have seen in the crisis of Syria, the intervention of Russia was the game changer, and Russia became a very, very confident and assertive in its foreign policy, whether it's Georgia, Ukraine, Syria, or in other matters. So Russia has become a really, really global player. If you see the alliances, because any country cannot dominate the entire world any country cannot dominate the entire world alone. So it has to form certain alliances. Even the Western countries like United States has its own military alliance, NATO, and it tries to control the power distribution of power in the international system through alliances. So Russia has also started forming alliances with other important powers and other important countries. It has both economic and military alliances. It has CSTO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in terms of security organization, and it is member of BRICS, and the Eurasian Union, and of course the international economic organizations. So Russia is also trying to enhance its influence in the international system through international organizations. So that is one of the important one of the important reasons why I say the influence of Russia in the international system has grown. So militarily, politically, economically, the influence of Russia has grown significantly in the international system, and that's the reason why I use the term re-emerging Russia in today's lecture. Now, if I talk of the capabilities of Russia, so Russia is among the top 10 largest economies in the world, and in terms of purchasing power parity, please remember I am not talking about the constant prices. I'm talking in terms of purchasing power parity. So in those terms, Russia has become probably sixth position in terms of purchasing power parity. India is fourth. The first is of course United States, followed by European Union as a whole, and then you have China. So in fact, sometimes China is second, and European Union is the third, and India is the fourth, and then there are other countries followed by Russia. So in terms of PPP, Russia is very, very important, and its GDP is nearly $2.2 trillion economy, and it is a systemic player. As I mentioned just now, Russia is a systemic player, and it has started playing very important global roles. It's the second most powerful military, which also has nuclear arsenals. It has a number of nuclear arsenals, and in fact, a number of heads. If you just count the number of nuclear warheads, so it is almost equal to United States even today. So militarily, Russia is very powerful, and I'll also show you the slides why I say that militarily Russia is very powerful today. Russia, as you know, that Russia has earlier the Soviet Union, and now Russia is the member of the Security Council of United Nations, and that gives some of the leverages in the international system to Russia. Russia has very educated and skilled manpower. So unlike many of the countries where the economy is powerful, but the manpower is not very skilled. Russia, because of the Soviet period and also because of the focus on education and social welfare programs, the manpower is very skilled and educated. So that gives an advantage to the Russian state and Russian economy. Russia, as you know, in the Eurasian landscape, Russia is the most powerful country. So if you see the region, starting broadly from Mongolia on this side to Iran on the southern side to Europe on the western side, so that broader Eurasian region that you see, which includes most of the Central Asian states, Russia, some of the East European states, sometimes Turkey also claims to be a member of Eurasian state. So there is some confusion about the exact Eurasian space. Many of the members, many of the other countries also claim to be the member of Eurasia. But what I'm focusing today, basically, I'm referring to the former Soviet Union space, where Russia and the Central Asian states are important. So in the Eurasian region, Russia is the most powerful country, and Russia plays a very important role when it comes to influencing the policy of Central Asia, the Soviet Central Asian states. So that's the reason I argue that in that region, Russia is even today a very, very important player. In fact, the most important player. And the advantage of Russia is that it also has abundance of resources because of the energy resources. Russia is many of the countries of Europe. And many of the countries in East Europe and many of the countries in Central Europe, and also to a large extent Germany. So these countries are highly dependent on supply of energy, supply of gas from Russia. Countries like Ukraine, countries like Hungary, countries like Belarus, and then of course Germany and many other countries in the Central Europe. So they are hugely dependent on energy supplies from Russia. So as a result, these countries have a stronger relationship with Russia in terms of economic relationship, and Russia can play a very important role in because of the energy resources that it has, and it also has other resources which gives a huge advantage to Russia in terms of economic influence in other regions. And but when it comes to measuring the importance of a country in the international system, political stability is a very, very important variable. Any country which is not politically stable will not be able to play important role in the international system. In the 1990s, as you know, Russia was not a stable country, and many of the scholars, analysts predicted that Russia might disintegrate in the future, or there were some of the secessionist demands in Chechnya, in Tatarstan, in Yakutia, in parts of Siberia. So they were asking for some kind of independence from Russia. Those problems at the moment, those problems have broadly been resolved. The demand of separation is not very powerful at the moment in Chechnya. They have negotiated very strong, good treaties with Tatarstan. Similarly, with other regions in Yakutia, Siberia, etc. So, politically, it's a very strong, politically centralized state. In the 1990s, the governors of the region, they started declaring themselves. They started behaving like sovereigns, and they were not following the instructions from Moscow, the center, and that led to a crisis where Yeltsin, because Yeltsin was fighting a battle at the center with the communist, and he always feared that the communist might come back to power. In the process, he negotiated very loose treaties with the republics and the governors of those republics, and as a result, those republics, or the federal republics of Russia, they started behaving like independent rulers in the region, and they were not following the constitution of Russia, and they were not following the instructions from Russia. Some of the states also refused to send the taxes to the center. That was the period which characterized the 1990s, the period of Yeltsin in the 1990s. But later on, as Putin comes to power in 2000, as Putin became president, so he started centralizing the Russian political system. What he did is that he started nominating the heads of the state, heads of the republics, and he made reforms where he divided the entire Russia into 7 federal districts. And entire Russia was divided into 7 regions, and the head of those 7 regions were appointed by the center. Also, some of the treaties which were not in congruence with the constitution of Russia, so those treaties of republics were eliminated. They were annulled. And he Putin put pressure on the republics to bring the laws, to bring the legislation of the republic in tune with the central laws, or in tune with the constitution of Russia. So as a result, Russia emerged as a very powerful and centralized state. Although the analysts argue that this led to some kind of weakening of the democracy, where the federal republics, which enjoyed much more power during the Yeltsin's period, so they came under pressure, and they started following the instructions from the center. So it became more like a centralized state, and because of that, the Western analysts are very critical of Putin's measure of this centralizing Russian policies. But in the process, what you see is that Russia emerged as a very powerful centralized state, and it had a very strong leader. The popularity of Putin in 1990 emerged primarily from his action in Chechnya. He's a very strong leader, and if you see the policy that he pursued in Munich, he clearly said that the U.S. should not be dictating its foreign policy on Russia. And the Munich speech, which is a famous speech, was very critical of the United States, and very openly criticized the role of the United States in Eurasia and Europe. And if you see, the kind of assertive policy that Putin followed in the case of conflict in Georgia, later on in the conflict in Ukraine, and much later in Syria. So that shows that Russia has emerged as a very confident and powerful state. The nationalism, Russian state today also, is a very nationalistic kind of state, and political parties, the important political parties, most of the parties are very, very nationalist. So, the kind of possibility of any threat of disintegration does not exist in Russia today. And political institutions have also grown in Russia. If you see the political parties, the way it emerged from 1990s onwards. So, first the Soviet system was one-party system, and from 1993 the multi-party system emerged in Russia, where the Communist Party remained an important party, but number of other parties like Our Home is Russia, Civic Union, later Unity, and much later in the new century, United Russia Party, promoted by Kremlin. So these political parties started playing important role in the system. Russia has a super presidential system where president has the maximum power. It has all the power. It also has the power to issue decree over and above the legislation of the Duma, which is the parliament of Russia. So the super presidential system makes Russia a very powerful and centralized state. Although it also gives kind of dictatorial power to the president, but analysts argued, especially the Russian analysts argued that some kind of this centralization was necessary to keep Russia stable. In the notion of democracy, Russia argues for a sovereign democracy. Russia argues that Russia does not follow the model of the Western liberal model of democracy, but Russia has a different model of democracy, and it calls itself a sovereign model of democracy, where the political stability, sovereignty of the country is important, and democracy comes not at the cost of political stability and sovereignty of a state. Now, if I take you to the economic indicators, that why I argue that Russia is emerging. So, if you leave aside the last 3 years, broadly from 2014 onwards till 2016 till present, the Russian economy has slowed down significantly. In fact, the growth rate is very, very low, or is almost negative in the last 3 years, mainly because of the two reasons. One is the price of gas in the international market, which was in 2014 it was almost like $100 per barrel, but it came down to nearly $35 per barrel. So that led to the shrinking of Russian economy, and that was followed by sanctions which were imposed in Russia following the reincorporation of Crimea into Russia. So that led to kind of economic slowdown, and today Russia is facing crisis. But that's a very cyclical phase, because please remember that Russia is a very resource-rich country, and also because the global economic slowdown, the demand for energy has gone down. But as the global economy picks up, the global economy, the Western economy, the Chinese, Indian, and other emerging economy, as it starts growing again, so the resource prices, like the price of energy, will go up, and it has already started going up this year. So it's very likely that Russia will start emerging again. The predictions, the projections of international organizations like IMF and the World Bank, it says that from next year, from 2017, Russian economy is likely to grow by 1%, and which is likely to pick up further in the years to come. Although there are certain challenges to Russian economy, because Russian economy is very dependent on energy sector, and it needs to diversify the Russian economy and develop the other sectors. But Russia has done pretty well in some of the sectors which were not traditionally doing well. Agriculture in the last few years have grown quite at a very good pace, nearly about 3% or sometimes more than that. Russia has stopped importing products like wheat or chicken or poultry even ham, pork, etc. from other countries. So Russian agriculture is doing very well. The employment rate is not very high compared to the 1990s. It's 5.6 something, but the economy is. The unemployment rate is not very high. The rate of poverty is around 13 to 14%, which is much less compared to compared to the 1990s. So in 1998, the poverty rate was nearly 30%. So if you compare that, that period to today's context, so Russian economy has done reasonably well. If you see 25 years into the account, and I'll show you the graph in a moment. So Russian economy has not done badly, except the last 3 years, and I strongly believe, and my assumptions are based on the empirical data from a number of other institutions, that Russian economy is going to catch up. Russian economy is going to grow again as the global economy starts growing in the years to come. So if I can show you the picture here. This gives you the growth rate in Russia, and the period is from 1992 to 1915. So in this period, if you see that the growth was negative. If you see the period between 90 and 95, there was a negative growth. Almost till more than minus 10%, the negative growth in 1990s, and this growth started picking up. It became positive only after 2000. After 2000, as you can see, it has started picking up, and then it grew from 2000 to 2012. It grew at a very good pace. Sometimes 7%, and later 5-6% on an average. But 2008 and 9 was the year of crisis. 2009, where Russia faced a crisis, and this was impacted by the global crisis, because 2009 you had the US economic crisis, and the Western economy also started facing crisis in that year. So 1 year Russian economy again went to negative growth, but immediately there was immediately the growth in the next year, in 2010, again it picked up, and the growth rate was almost like 4.6% in 2010, and that continued till 2013. Only from 2014, the Russian economy again, you see the growth is going down, and if the graph that I showed you just now in that graph, is clear that in 2015 the growth was negative, but it's likely to emerge. It's likely to the growth rate is likely to be positive from the next year. If you can see the next this graph, this graph tells you about the GDP per capita income. The GDP here, if you see the period from 1992 to 2014, so this period is the period of growth. From 1991 to 2000, the growth was negative, and the GDP per capita was also negative. But at the moment, despite the economic decline, if you see the per capita economy, then is more than $10,000 US at the constant price of 2010. So more than $10,000. So Russia, even today, despite the economic slowdown that you see, even today is this is a middle range country. It has a per capita income of GDP per capita of more than $10,000, and if you compare that with Indian per capita income of approximately $2,000, so it's much higher. So that gives a huge advantage to Russia in terms of, because Russia has abundance of resources. Russia is a huge country. Compared to that, Russia has population which is very less. So as a result, the GDP distribution is also, the per capita GDP is also very high for Russia, for the Russian people. The next picture, this graph, if you see the graph here, this is the unemployment rate. And if you see, this gives you the figure from 1992 to 2014. So the unemployment rate was very high between 1995 to 2000. And if you remember, the 1998 was the period of crisis when the Russian economy suffered a crisis. But after that, the unemployment rate has constantly gone down, except the year 2009, when again because of the economic crisis, this unemployment rate was high. But after that, unemployment rate has constantly come down. And in this year, even in 2015-16, the unemployment rate is down to 5.6% approximately, nearly 5.6%. So that gives you the broad idea of how Russian economy has evolved over the last two and a half decades. There were three stages of transition. If I can take you back to the transition period, so there were three stages of Russian economic transition. First was the period of neoliberalism, triumphant neoliberalism, and predatory capitalism, where most of the state resources were privatized by Yeltsin and his team. So this was the period from 1991 to 1998. The second phase was the phase of recovery and the reversal towards a state capitalism, and that phase is from 1919 to 2012. And the third phase was the phase of economic slowdown and sanctions. So, and the first phase, the Russian economy declined remarkably. Most of the state resources, through what came to be known as the shock therapy, and later on, the privatization schemes, loan for share program, etc. So, what happened was the plundering of the state resources, because the Soviet economy was the state-controlled economy, and when they started privatization in the 1990s, first it was done by the Prime Minister Gadar, and later on, it was followed by the other prime ministers. So in that period, the state resources were sold at a very, very low price, and what happened is that the oligarchs emerged in that period. A number of oligarchs, they started controlling the economy of Russia, not only the economy of Russia, but also they started influencing the politics of Russia. The oligarchs like the Yukos, the Khodorkovsky, then the other Berezovsky and other oligarchs, they emerged very powerful in the 1990s, and they started funding state elections. They started controlling the politics, and Yeltsin was backed by a number of oligarchs in that period. So that is the period of economic crisis. Republics were not sharing the resources with the center. There is a huge problem of capital flight, that the Russian the businessmen, they transported the capital from Russia and parked the capital in other countries of the West. So the capital flight on an average was nearly $40 billion a year from Russia to other countries. So that was the kind of situation which was prevalent in the 1990s. That was also the period of deindustrialization, because of the transition period. It took a lot of time before even the private industries could be established, and the Russian state was not supporting the industries which were either lacking resources, financial resources, or technology. So there is no attempt by the state to modernize. As a result, those industries were declared sick industries, and they were gradually sold to the private players. Life expectancy in that period went down from 69 years to 65 years, and the value of ruble, which was almost equal to dollar, in dollar in 1990-91. So that value went in 1998. $1 was equal to almost 5,000 rubles. So that was the kind of crisis that Russia was facing in the 1990s. But a number of measures were taken by President Putin. It included tax reform, a civil code, judicial reforms, and deregulation of state enterprises, income tax at 13% and corporate tax at 24%. This was also supported by a rise in price of oil and gas and high growth rate till 2008. Real income in Russia rose by 250% from 2000 to 2008, and decline in poverty from 30% in 1998 to 13% in 2016, and decline in unemployment rate from 14% to 5.6%. So these are the these are the reasons why I argue that the economy which was in crisis in the 1990s, that crisis, it overcame the crisis, and Russia started became economically stable in the new century. Friends, in this session I'll be talking about re-emerging Russia, but my focus would be on the foreign policy and the military and security policy, and a little bit of maybe the alliances that Russia created in the last few years. So I'll argue that how Russian foreign policy has become much more confident, aggressive. It has an element of risk taking. It has become very, very assertive in the last few years. And that would be followed by the kind of the military might that Russia has, how Russia has become stable in terms of security, and finally I'll also argue about the kind of new alliances that Russia has created in the last few years. Let me take you back to the way the foreign policy evolved in the last 20-25 years and how it became so confident into today's context. In the 1990s, the Russian state or the Russian leadership, they tried to establish very close linkages with the Western countries, and they even wanted to sign agreement with NATO, and they were very close to United States in the 1990s. Yeltsin and Kozyrov was the prime minister. So they tried to force a very close relationship with the West, but very soon it became clear to the Russian leadership that what West was doing in Bosnia, in Serbia, and the kind of interventions that they were doing in Europe through expansion of NATO towards which included the Eastern European countries and also the Baltic states. So that started creating some kind of tension between the West and Russia. The next phase that you see, which started becoming evident in the 1990s itself. So the next phase was closer cooperation with the Eurasian countries. So Eurasian countries which were ignored in the early 1990s. So Eurasian countries became the focus of Russia in the late 90s. And Primakov, when he became the prime minister of Russia, so Primakov, he although he was the president was Yeltsin, but Primakov started promoting closer cooperation with countries like China and India, closer cooperation with Eurasian states, and also closer cooperation with the West Asian states. So what you see, there is a change of policy taking place in the later part of 1990s. But when the 9/11 attack took place, a terrorist bombing took place in the United States. So in that, Russia closely cooperated with United States, and Russia did not veto even in the Security Council against U.S. action in Afghanistan, and Russian president was the first person to call the U.S. president and openly saying the words of support to the American president. But gradually, after 2003 onwards, what you see is a kind of a rift which has started emerging on a number of issues. But the most important issue where Russia is very sensitive is the expansion of NATO on the Russian borders. NATO not only included Baltic states, it included most of the Eastern European countries, which were earlier the part of the broader Soviet alliance system. And it also started moving towards other countries like Ukraine, Georgia, and the Caucasian state and other Caucasian states like Azerbaijan and Armenia. So the Western expansion through European Union and Western expansion through the expansion of NATO, so that created a kind of fear in the Russian mindset, and they became very critical of the West. So what you see is a kind of rift which started emerging between the West and Russia, and this rift first reflected in 2007 a Munich statement or Munich speech of President Putin, where he clearly said that U.S. was responsible for a number of crises in the region, and it warned U.S. of not to interfere in the Eurasian space where the Russian security and strategic interest are involved. So what happens, after 2007, when the crisis in Georgia, where the Western countries started supporting the Georgian regime, and then the Russian intervention took place. In Georgia, and very soon the Georgian army was defeated, and the two of the provinces of Georgia, this South Ossetia and Abkhazia, so they became de facto independent with the support of course, Russia. So the Russian intervention in Georgia was a kind of a message to the West that West should not interfere in the political affairs of the neighboring countries or the countries where Russia considers its zone of influence. So Georgia came first, and after that, that was followed by the crisis in Ukraine, where the European Union, through its Eastern Partnership Program, they wanted to include Ukraine in the Eastern Partnership Program, and the government there was not willing to. Initially, was not willing. So then the Western countries, they started promoting kind of protest and kind of uprising to change the government. So that led to the Russian intervention in Ukraine, and finally, what happens was that Crimea, which was part of Ukraine earlier, and so Crimea Crimea was reincorporated by Russia. I'm using the term reincorporation because that's the official term used by the Russian government. If you read the Western literature, so they use the term annexation. So and this is a semantic debate because Russia does not want. Crimea was initially the part of Russia, so Russia claims that it was because Crimea was very, very important for Russia in terms of its Black Sea fleet there, in terms of it giving access to the Black Sea, and through the Black Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. So because of that, Crimea is very, very important for Russia, and in Crimea the majority of the population is also of the Russian ethnic origin and the Russian speaking people. So as a result, Crimea was incorporated Crimea was incorporated, and that's the term used is reincorporation in the official Russian literature. So that was kind of again a message to the West that Ukraine is a very important country for Russia. Ukraine is broadly within the sphere of influence of Russia traditionally, and in terms of ethnic population, both Ukrainian and the Russian population are the Slavic population. But the European countries, especially the European Union, wanted to offer some kind of first partnership program to Ukraine, and later on probably the membership, which could have given the right to Ukrainian citizen to migrate or to work in European countries. But because of the protest, and then the crisis which happened in the eastern provinces of Ukraine, even today you have the civil war. Because they are dominated by the Russian population there, and there's a conflict between the Russian population and the military, state military of Ukraine, and one party is supported by Russia, the other is by the Ukraine and the Western countries. So a kind of civil war situation is even is there in Ukraine today. But the important, what I'm trying to argue here is that that gave the message to the West that Russia is not a weak country. Russia is today, despite its economic slowdown, Russia is very powerful in terms of military, and Russian state is willing to take risk. Russia knew that that in this intervention in Ukraine might lead to some kind of NATO intervention from the other side, but that did not deter Russia from intervening in the region where it considers the core strategic interest of Russia. But that was just the second phase of this is just the second example of a Russian intervention in the other countries. But what comes later was much more remarkable. That people started saying that after Ukraine is a kind of new Cold War has emerged, and the West, the interest of West and Russia are incompatible. But it went to a new level when Russia intervened militarily in Syria, and because of Russian intervention, the broader politics in Syria and the West Asia changed. The Assad regime was supported by Iran and Hezbollah, and when the Russian intervention took place in Syria, so that led to a kind of game change that completely changed the game in Syria. It became impossible to defeat the regime of Assad by the Western forces and the other fundamentalist forces supported by ISIS and some other radical groups. So in Syria, that showed that how Russia has become very, very confident in terms of its assertive foreign policy. Many of the analysts started comparing Russian intervention in Syria with the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan in 1979, but they are very, very different. Here, the motive of Russia was to provide support to the Assad regime. It was also to provide, because Russia has its naval base in Tartus in Syria. So it was also to give the message that Russia will remain an important player in Syria, and Russia also wanted to be included in the future negotiations on the fate of Syria in the future. So those were the reasons why Russia intervened. But what is important takeaway from this intervention is that Russian state is very, very confident today, is willing to take risks, is adventurous, and Russia is not even scared of the NATO forces. So that's the reason why I argue that Russia has become very, very assertive and very aggressive also in its foreign policy. And if I have to give the economic elements of Russian foreign policy, so Russian foreign policy economically is even today driven by the energy resources. European Union is the most important country for Russia today because of the energy exports that Russia does with the European countries. Maximum energy of Russia till now, energy goes to the European countries, Germany, this Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania, and Turkey also, and other countries. So many of the countries are very dependent on the energy supplies from Russia. So that gives some kind of leverage to Russia in Europe. And many of the pipelines are being constructed from Russia to European countries. And Russia, that energy, it also provides an instrument, supply of energy that provides an instrument of to the Russian foreign policy. But after the sanctions, after the crisis in Ukraine, what we witness is a gradual diversification of economic relationship with other countries, and China has become the pivot of Russian pivot to Asia for Russian foreign policy. And economically, China has become very, very important. Russia and China have signed a deal worth $400 billion, which is being portrayed as the biggest deal ever between the two countries. And there are a number of other deals which have taken place between China and Russia. And if you see the Chinese position on the international issues, so that always tends to favor Chinese position always tends to favor Russian position. Although China is not willing to send military either in Syria or in other countries, Libya or other countries, but Chinese position has been very supportive of the Russian position, and a very close cooperation in terms of military and in terms of economic cooperation are emerging between these two countries. Russia is also trying to create Eurasian Union as an important economic bloc, where countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, then Armenia, Belarus. So these countries will have a tariff-free movement of goods and services, and also movement of people. So they are trying to create a kind of economic union very similar to the European Union, for basically facilitating trade and movement of people from one region to the other. The defense exports remain a very important part of the Russian strategy, Russian economic strategy, and the two of the important countries where Russia supplies military and defense weapons are China and India. India is the biggest importer of defense weapons from defense goods from Russia, and China also, whether it's the fighter aircraft like Sukhoi 30 MKI, MiG aircraft, T-80 tanks, or the BrahMos missile. So these are in India, these weapons, the defense weapons, are being imported by India from Russia. Even submarines and aircraft carrier. So all of these were imported by India from Russia. So India and China, these are the two countries which remain very important in terms of the supply of military and weapons, defense products from Russia to India and China. Then for imports, the Russian imports and investment also come maximum from Europe. Because the consumer products are coming mostly from Europe and China in Russia. Investment is coming also from Russia, from European countries and China. Technology is coming mostly from European countries. So economically, Russia has a very close ties with the European countries. Now, the pivot to Asia. Pivot to Asia is basically China for Russia. Focus is now on East. Russia is also trying to diversify its relationship with other countries in Southeast Asia, Korea, and also Japan. Russia is playing again a very important role, as I told you, in West Asia. Now, in West Asia, US is a declining power for the simple reason that the Iran, after the sanctions have been lifted on Iran. So Iran is becoming powerful again. In Iraq, because of the Shia regime in power, Iran has started playing important role in Iraq also. And in Syria, as you know, that the Assad regime is going to survive, and Iran played a very important role in that. So, and Russia through that played a very important role. So the declining influence of United States in the West Asian countries is being, in a way, being replaced by countries like Iran, Russia, Turkey, etc. So in West Asia, Russia has become very, very important. Closer ties with Eurasian states, that provides a very important area of influence for Russia. Ties with India are very, very strong, and foreign policy now, the Russian foreign policy is backed by the military might, the military, because earlier it was all about the talk and the economy in the 1990s, but now Russia is not just talking, and it's not Russian foreign policy is not just guided by the economic determinants, it's also guided by the security and military factors. So Russia is playing a different role in the international system, and that's the reason I argue that Russia is a re-emerging power in the international system. Now coming back to the military power, the military might of Russia. So Russia is the second most powerful, the military most powerful country in the world. It's Russia is the only country today which can deter or which can check the growing influence of NATO in the international system. There are 800,000 strong regular army that Russia has today, and then there are other the reserve armies, which is one of the highest in the world. So Russian army is very, very strong, and Russia has also inducted a new generation of ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. It has the sophisticated fighter jets which can compete with any other fighter jets in the world. It has a very advanced anti-missile defense system, so that gives huge advantage to Russia. And some of the technologies were used or tested in Syria recently. Russia has nearly 15,000 tanks. In fact, it is said that Russia has much more tanks than United States or any other country in the world. So in number of tanks, or in terms of the sophisticated tanks, Russia is the biggest country. It has 3,500 aircrafts. US is the number one power in terms of the fighter planes. It has almost thrice, 3 or 4 times the number of fighter planes compared to Russia. Russia also has one aircraft carrier, which is used for carrying aircrafts from one place to other, and it has very advanced submarines, and it has also has nuclear submarines. One of the submarines was leased out to Russia, which from Russia was leased out to India in the name of Arihant, and India is using that nuclear submarine for its security purposes in the Indian Ocean. Russia has a defense expenditure of just $46 billion, and I'm giving you the latest figure, and the figure of 2015-16. So it has a defense expenditure of nearly $46 billion, and if you compare that figure to the United States, so that is very, very low. United States has a figure of nearly $600 billion. So compared to that, the military expenditure of Russia is very, very low, but still Russia is maintaining a huge defense industry. It has sophisticated technology. It has sophisticated weapons. In terms of military defense expenditure, China is also much bigger compared to Russia. China is spending nearly $150 billion on defense, and China is also modernizing its military very, very fast. And the military reforms have also taken place. Very recently, in 2013, just before the Ukraine crisis, after the war in Georgia, the conflict in Georgia, so military modernization has taken place in Russia, and that military modernization has led to focus on technological warfare, to focus on information warfare, and use of sophisticated technology rather than the unskilled manpower. So the direction of Russian military reform has shifted. Russian military is very, very modernized today, and that has kind of enhanced the confidence of Russia on its military, and that explains why Russia was willing to intervene in countries like Ukraine, and Syria. And in Syria, the military intervention, which was for a short time, but it was very, very successful. And the fighter jets or the missiles, all of them were used in the case of Syria. And even NATO, recognized the importance of, or the kind of the kind of sophisticated weapons which were used by the importance of these weapons which were used by Russia in the crisis of Syria. And then coming to the nuclear warheads, which again, many of the analysts argue that nuclear warheads can be used, or nuclear warheads are used as deterrents in the international system. So Russia has nearly 7,300 nuclear warheads, and compare that with the United States, which also has 7,100 nuclear warheads. So in number of nuclear warheads also, although in none of the wars the nuclear weapons have been used, but except the Hiroshima, which was done by the United States during the World War II period. So after that, nuclear weapons have never been used. But nuclear weapons, it provides some kind of, nuclear weapons provide some kind of deterrence to the hostile countries or to the enemy countries. As a result, even the US would be much more careful when it comes to using nuclear powers, or when it comes to attacking Russia. So that gives a huge confidence and advantage to Russia, and those things are very, very important for Russia. And in terms of military might, Russia is second only to the United States, and the third country, which is China, in terms of military, it is very, very powerful. Now coming to the alliances, because in the international system, if you want to become a systemic player, a country cannot play all the roles alone. It has to form alliances in terms of military alliances and also economic alliances with other countries. And Russia has recognized the multilateral alliances and military alliances as important aspect of Russian foreign policy. And what you see is that Russian focus on the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China cooperation, and also Russian focus on the Eurasian Union for economic reasons, because these are the economic organizations. So because of Russia has started believing in the importance of multilateral alliances. It has close bilateral cooperation with countries like China and India, and that gives advantage to Russia in terms of having influence in the region. It also has security alliances in the form of Shanghai Cooperation Organization and Collective Security Treaty Organization. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is the security organization, while CSTO is a military alliance, almost similar to NATO. So Russia has started forming, although it's at the very initial stage, it's at the incipient stage, but gradually, Russia has recognized the importance of alliances in the international system. And as the US influence is declining in the Eurasian region, so that is likely to be supplanted by, replaced by the countries like Russia and China. So with this, I come to the conclusion of my today's lecture. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a very, very productive session. And dear friends, we believe that you might have liked today's lecture. Dear friends, if you want to give your feedback for this particular lecture, or if you have any query which you like to be answered, then you can mail us at info.cec@nic.in. Definitely, we will try to solve your queries the next time when Dr. Rajan Kumar visits our studio. And very soon, this lecture is going to be uploaded on YouTube for you. So keep watching the lectures and keep writing to us. We would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you.